We're going to go ahead and get started, and all right. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 regular board meeting of August 1st, 2022. Would everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce our participants for this evening. Starting at my far right is Miss Marion Southwick, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hawker, Superintendent, and to my immediate left, Mr. Casey Morrisroe, Vice Chair, Miss Leslie Bierke, Board Member, Miss Heather Tenbrink, Board Member, Miss Allie Anderton, Board Member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, Board Chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting, and comments related to the revised budget will take place later in the agenda. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Comments may also be submitted to the board via email at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing through the clerk. Thank you. This evening, we're all learning a new system on our iPads, so if we're all clicking back and forth, there might be a little bit of learning going on up here. So. Do I have a motion this evening to approve the agenda? And I think we're going to do an amendment to the agenda to include item 3B based on information received today. So is there a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add item 3B, which is to recognize the Idaho History Teacher of the Year for 2022, which is a Coeur d'Alene High School teacher. We just received that information today, so I'd like to add that to the agenda under board recognitions.
Terrific. Do I have a second?
Second.
And is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I think vote on the amendment first.
Vote on the amendment. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. So do I need to make another motion?
No, I made the motion to amend the agenda. So we'll vote on that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Then I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
great.
And I'll second.
And second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion is approved. It feels like a while. Agenda is approved, and terrific. We'll go on to our first item of business this evening. And tonight we're going to recognize someone really important to our community and to our district as well. And so we have a very special guest with us this evening, and we've invited Chief Allen, Chairman of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, to join us here so that we can recognize the substantial contributions the Coeur d'Alene Tribe has made to our school district. Chief Allen, and do I have a microphone, Scott, if I wanted one for the front? Oh, here it comes. Okay. All right. Oh, there we go. And Chief Allen, I know that you don't always like to come up and be recognized, but we're so thrilled that you're here. And when I started going through this list of the ways in which you serve our kids, the community needs to know because it's really powerful. And so if you wouldn't mind coming on up here, all right? And it's going to take me a few minutes because this list is pretty incredible and just incredible. So I really want to go through it. So, and then we've got something you can hold too. But tonight, I really want to thank you, first and foremost, for your contribution to kids and our community. Through your generous giving, our students and our recent graduates, your own recent graduate, are rewarded with some incredible experiences and opportunities. The many ways you've contributed to the well-being of our students would take a lot of time to recite. And here are some of the highlights. The Coeur d'Alene Tribe recently awarded our Early Learning Center a $30,000 grant for preschool playground equipment. Venture High School was the recipient of a $20,000 grant for weight training equipment. The tribe gave Ramsey Magnet School a grant of over $58,000 to build a piano lab for the school's music program, including pianos, computer equipment, music education software, and furniture. This past spring, the tribe provided a huge boost to the Coeur d'Alene Chamber Top Scholars Breakfast, at first matching all the donations and then doubling its contribution at the last minute so that graduating seniors received $104,000 for college. We also recently learned that the Coeur d'Alene Tribe has pledged $250,000 towards the Coeur d'Alene High School Viking Field of Dreams, a community fundraising effort. And here are some of the other examples of your ongoing generosity. You've given funds to support the Canfield Middle School Club 240 program, which provides after-school activities and homework help. You've provided funding for a day camp organized by your Indian education program. Now I gotta go to the next page. It just keeps going. Lots and lots of grants to enrich classroom communities and empower young learners in our elementary schools, such as Winton Elementary, where one teacher tells us of your support enabled her to buy snacks, book sets, alternative furniture and sensory items, as well as let students buy their own books from Scholastic. And that's a great thing for kids. At Northwest Expedition Academy, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe provided grants for project-based learning opportunities and funded the Life Skills program to add adaptive technology in the classroom. You've provided gifts for school fundraisers and silent auctions too. They're an important partner for us, the principal at Fernan STEM Academy said. Bryant Elementary School created a student-run care station for one of your grants. And in just the past year, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe has awarded more than $147,000 in school and classroom grants in our district. Members of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe have also volunteered their time in our schools, such as sending drummers to perform at the Hayden Elementary School 4th grade concert celebrating Idaho history. And there's so many other examples going back years. Time and time again, you've stepped up in big ways to make a big difference. And often these are quiet gestures, as we know that you don't do it for the recognition. But you definitely deserve to be acknowledged as a trusted partner, a caring benefactor, and a true champion of education. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the Coeur d'Alene School District Administration, our principals, our teachers, our students, and our families, we want to thank you, Chief Allen, and the whole Coeur d'Alene Tribe for all that you've done and continue to do to support and improve education for all. Thank you. We were questioning what kind of an award to put on there, so we had to put a bunch of different words. So this is the Inspirational Leadership Award. So would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. First and foremost, school board, I want to thank you guys for your guys' hard work. It's hard work being up there in the public eye, and it's hard work, and nobody says thank you. But so on behalf of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, thank you guys for your hard work. Being an elected leader, you guys run a tight ship, and I know that, and it's hard, but we do it for the kids. And so on behalf of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe and on behalf of my people, it's an honor. And like I said, Casey always put me on the spot here. I ducked him for all summer. I kept saying, oh, we'll send somebody else up there. And he's like, oh, we need, so anyway, but just on behalf of my tribe, we're happy. One of the things that you talked about was the Scholastics books. And the reason why we did that was because as a kid, I grew up with a single mom we grew up very poor, and so every time that the Scholastics came around, I always wanted to fill out the little form and get all the cool stuff, but could never do it. And so that's the kind of stuff. That's why we do it. We do it so the kids don't have to be embarrassed. The kids can just go there and do it. And so thank you guys so much. And you guys didn't have to do this. We don't do it for this. We do it because we care. And you guys do this. You guys don't do this for the the board pay or the volunteer hours, or you guys do it because yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's you do it because you care, and that's why we do it. We do it because we care. So again, thank you guys so much for the recognition. You guys, like I said, I tried to duck it for a while, but I couldn't. So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All right. Scott, you want to stand? You guys, why don't you guys come around? We'll have it.
Persistence.
You would run out of excuses eventually.
Terrific. So this evening, we also want to recognize the Coeur d'Alene High School teacher Colin Donovan, who was just named the 2022 Idaho History Teacher of the Year, presented by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. This honor highlights the importance of history education by honoring exceptional American history teachers from elementary school through high school. Here's what Principal Mike Randall said about this outstanding teacher. Mr. Donovan has earned the respect and admiration of students, colleagues, and the Viking community at large. His passion for history fuels an uncommon level of interest and engagement among his students. His ability to breathe life into the past affords Coeur d'Alene High School students a vantage of history that few experience, ultimately giving rise to not only informed citizens, but critical thinkers who understand the link between the past and the present. Well done, Mr. Donovan. We've now got our high school student body report, and tonight is from K-Tech Auto and Diesel program.
My name is Jesse Stalker. I'm in the Automotive Technology program.
My name is Carter Sorensen. I'm in the Automotive Technology program. I'm currently working on this Ram 2500 behind me and take part in the Humvee project.
Usually we have a select few of kids that come and help with it, but if we need everyone to help, everyone comes help. We also have the welding class helping us build roll cages and stuff like that. Then we have just a bunch of other classes helping in, and it really makes the project a lot of fun. We've got the Humvee from the National Guard. They brought it to us. We kind of got it as a roller. It had transmission, engine in it and everything, but we had to pull it out because it was seized up and everything. So we have put an LS in it, which is a Chevy motor, and we've done a bunch of other stuff to it, and it's definitely coming along really well.
Earlier this year we worked on a 97 Chevy 1500 and we replaced the engine in that. We took it out and put a new one in. After I graduate, I'm going down to CSI to do the ASEP program. I'm being sent down there by George Gee in Liberty Lake, and we're learning, we're going to be certified for GM.
I am planning to attend the ASEP program, and this program is in Twin Falls. It's for the Chevy program, and I work at Knutson right now, and they're sending me down there, definitely paying for tools and helping me pursue a goal that I really want to do.
My name is Torrin Wagner, and I am in the Diesel Technology program.
My name is Katrina Evans, and I'm in the Diesel Technology program.
I work on many projects. I work on this Humvee that you see behind me, and many large semi-truck and trailers.
So since this is my first year, me and some of my classmates have taken apart a Ford 6.0, and we've taken the engine out, and we're getting ready to swap it with a new one.
My favorite parts would have to be the people I meet here and the things I learn. You can learn so much from your teachers and other students that you are in the program with.
After I graduate, I hope to get a business degree and maybe pursue a career in aviation.
I plan on attending Spokane Community College and going into the Toyota 10 program for Toyotas.
Terrific. It's great to learn about that. Thank you, K-Tech.
Just quickly, I'd like to just comment about that program. I spent quite a bit of time out there this spring with some industry partners on the automotive side and then on the marine side too. And I participated in a meeting with a group of marine folks, so boat industry folks. I think there was 37 different organizations that were involved, some national manufacturers, trade associations, and then kind of regionally boat builders and boat dealers. Really looking to implement this type of a program with a marine focus. And then I also was out there with some of the automotive groups. There's a tremendous need amongst both of those industries for qualified technicians, and so I know there's lots of discussion out there about expanding the program. Those two programs share one section of K-Tech, and so I think they're looking to separate them, and they could double the number of students who are able to take each of those courses. So those are both super successful programs with high placement rates, and do a lot of good things for those kids.
Thanks.
And they're good paying jobs.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great. We've got 2 department spotlights this evening, and so first up we've got our technology school board and safety and security update, which is great news in light of our upcoming vote.
SPFL.
SPFL, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Smith, members of the board. I'm Seth Denniston. I'm the Director of Technology, Safety, and Security, and this is kind of an annual update, so I've done this in the past. The last couple of years, we've been pretty busy with COVID-related shutdowns and stuff, as you can imagine, so the update looked a little bit different than it'll look tonight. But I'm going to give you an update on each of the 3 departments that we have. So safety and security, information technology, kind of traditional IT, and then also instructional technology. And so first off, just wanted to give you an org chart so you can kind of see how we're organized there. Safety and security wise, we have a safety and security coordinator, and then our campus safety officers at Lake City and Coeur d'Alene High School. In terms of information technology, on the top layer there, the systems analysts, network supervisors, lead technician, that's what we refer to as our administrative technology staff. And then on the bottom row there, those are more building-based technology staff. So those are folks that are out in the buildings helping teachers and students when something breaks or goes wrong. And then lastly, we have 1.5 instructional technology coaches, and those are the folks that are responsible for professional development, teaching people how to use all the different tools that we have in place in our district. In terms of staffing over time, I wanted to show this. You can see in 2019 there, we had a pretty good bump in terms of the number of staff in the security department, and that was 1 security technician and our 4 CSOs at the high school. Otherwise, we've really been pretty flat when it comes to staffing in technology and safety and security. When we think about technology in our district, one of the main ways that we get support out to our end users is through what we call support tickets. So these are teachers submitting tickets. These could be students submitting tickets about a broken Chromebook or something like that. You can see in the 2007-2008 school year, we had just over 1,000, about 1,600 tickets. Contrast that with last school year, we went over 14,000 closed tickets for the first time. A big reason for that massive jump is just remote learning. For the first time, we had students and parents submitting tickets as well as our staff members. And so our technical support staff were not only working with our staff, but also people at home trying to troubleshoot their Wi-Fi, all kinds of different stuff. So you can see it's just been a tremendous amount of growth and demand for our services. We also use that same system to work on security work orders as well. So whether it's a camera not functioning or access control, that also is included in those numbers as well. When it comes to technology and safety and security in our district, I just like to highlight some of the numbers behind it. To give you some context, one of the largest companies in the state of Idaho is St. Luke's down in Boise. They have just over 10,000 employees. To contrast that with us, we have over 12,000 users. Our network is highly complex. There is a lot that goes into it. There is a lot of different, privacy settings that we have to pay attention to. When it comes to provisioning apps and software, it's pretty complicated. We also have 24 locations, so we're servicing the network at all of those locations. So it's not only pretty complex, but it's also very broad geographically. And so if you look, I just put some numbers under classroom, infrastructure, and security. We've got about 12,000 Chromebooks that my staff services. The last couple of years, that's been a lot more onerous than in the years prior because we're using that stuff a lot, which is what we want, obviously. When it comes to infrastructure, that's often the stuff that nobody thinks about, but is necessary to make everything run. So the network switches that provide internet access to classrooms, the wireless access points that connect everything wirelessly, of which we're replacing at the middle schools and high schools this summer. So a lot of that stuff you see when it comes to you for approval, but I kind of just wanted to give you some context behind it as well. And then, of course, when it comes to safety and security, we're going to be talking about that a lot more, depending on what happens with our school plant facilities levy August 30th. But we have a lot of things that we've purchased with bond funds in 2013, and that stuff's starting to fail. It's not unanticipated. It's almost 10 years old. Any technology that's 10 years old is going to need to be replaced at some point. And so that's kind of where we're getting with our security cameras, our access control doors. I also put on there vape sensors. We're just starting to try those out in some of our schools. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but it is a deterrent. And so we're trying those, especially at our middle schools right now. When it comes to our budget, I just wanted to break out some of our technology budget. As you can see, the vast majority of our funding for technology goes to equipment and devices, and I'll break that down more a little bit in just a second. The other large category is, of course, staffing. So all those staff members I mentioned previously are on there. And then licensing and contracts. So software is, of course, a big expense for our school district. And then the last slice of that pie chart, and the one that I would like to see grow a little bit in the future, is professional development. That's always something that is necessary, of course, but it's hard to make time for. Technology is something that's always changing. We could be doing professional development on technology all the time because every year a new software component comes out, something changes, and so that's something that we would like to continue to grow. When it comes to our security budget, the largest portion of that is our SRO contract. So we contract with the City of Coeur d'Alene as well as the City of Hayden for 8 SROs in our school buildings. So we have SROs in all of our middle schools and high schools every day. And then at our elementary schools, we have 3 SROs that kind of split time between. So, and I think I just misspoke, it's actually 9 SROs. And then staffing, that includes our CSOs, our security technician, and our safety and security coordinator. And then the last portion here is $138,000, and that's more discretionary. Really, that's just a drop in the bucket right now. That's what we're using to replace things as they fail. But with so many buildings, with security cameras going out, that really just helps us afford what breaks at the time. I wanted to include this just so you had some context in terms of budget. I jokingly referred to this as the multicolored spaghetti chart, but it just shows a little bit of how it's looked over time in especially technology, but also safety and security. And so you can see in 2013, we had that $5 million that we put towards technology and safety and security via the bond. And then over time, we've added in some of those things to our normal replacement cycles, but we just haven't had enough funding to do everything. The blue line that kind of goes up and peaks there in 2019, 2020 is state classroom technology funding. You can see the last 2 years it's been cut pretty dramatically. And so that's where some of that ESSER funding has helped to kind of stay the line when it comes to technology. Just like anything right now, technology prices are going crazy. I've seen increases in some categories of over 20%. Not only that, it's really hard to get stuff right now. So last school year, we ordered laptops in February, March. We didn't get them until December. That makes it really hard on our staff to do that because now school's back in session and we're trying to swap stuff out. This year we were fortunate; we were able to get stuff here in July, but there's just a lot of issues right now with the supply chain, of course, as you know. So one of the concerns that I have is once ESSER goes away, hopefully that state funding will come back to the level it was at. That really helped us provide devices to all of our staff and students, and so I'm hopeful that that does come back. Speaking of equipment and devices, I wanted to kind of break that down for you a little bit more. About 1.4 million is classroom devices, so that's things like Chromebooks, desktop computers, laptops, but that also includes things like document cameras, projectors, stuff that is used every day by our staff and students. About 400,000 of that is ongoing infrastructure, so that would be like our network switches, our battery backups for our schools, things that kind of need to be on a replacement cycle. A lot of that was purchased with that bond in 2013, and then we've been able to replace it annually, about a seventh of our devices at a time using E-rate funding. And then the last category there is one-time infrastructure, and this is a lot of ESSER funding. So about 472,000. That includes things like wireless access points that don't have to be replaced every year. It could be like every 5 or 6 years. And then I also wanted to break down our licensing and contracts, partly to show some of the growth, especially in cybersecurity. So about 20% of our spending on licensing and contracts goes to cybersecurity. And so that's things like our antivirus, our anti-malware. There's just so many layers that are needed, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a second, to keep our data, our information safe. So when you think about safety and security, a lot of times we think about physical safety and security, but I'm also thinking a lot about cyber safety and security. That's just such a huge component to what we're doing. The biggest section of our software licensing and contracts is instructional, so about 41%. That's tools that are typically used in the classroom. So think like Schoology, which is our learning management system, Homeroom, which is our instructional management system, houses a lot of our data. Also, though, tools that staff and teachers use every day, like our PDF editor would be included in that. So some of the tools that you just need to use your Chromebook or your computer. And then the last major category there is technology tools. That's a lot of our administrative technology tools. So what we use to manage our accounts, to like work on our website, stuff like that is included in that category. And so you see a lot of these software purchases, if they're over 25,000, they're highlighted to you in your consent agenda. When we talk about cybersecurity, the best approach is a layered approach. And so I included this diagram just so you could see all the different layers that we have. And I'm not going to go through every one here, but it really starts with our firewall. And that's just housed right over here at maintenance. That's where our main data center is. And so that firewall sits in between our school district network and the internet. And so everything is going through that firewall. As you can imagine, with over 10,000 students, that's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of different data that's going in and out. And so the second step there is our content filter. So that's filtering everything that our users see. We can set that up for, of course, inappropriate content, but also things that are unsafe that might bring viruses into our network. So that's kind of a second step there. And then at every step, whether it's a district computer or a wireless device, a staff member's email, each of those have different cybersecurity controls to ensure that we don't get hit with something like ransomware. In terms of summer projects, we're working on a lot of stuff. This is one of our busiest times of year. If you see one of our technicians out and about, please don't ask them how their summer vacation was because they have been working so hard. They often don't take a lot of time during the summer. They usually wait until school starts just so we can get everything underway. Even just replacing 3,000 Chromebooks during the summer, though, is a huge undertaking. And so we often hire an intern. This summer's intern is actually someone who you know, Austin Smith, who's been on the student advisory group. That's been a really successful program. We've hired 3 people out of our summer internship program, so we're pretty proud of that. That also just helps us to get new people coming in and trained up on technology in our district, and kind of gives us a pipeline of new talent when we have future openings. And then future projects, all that stuff continues. The big kind of question mark right now is safety and security. I know some of my staff is really anxious about what's coming next there. We're excited about the possibility of some much needed replacements, but there's also going to be a lot of work. And so I just wanted to mention to you, I'm always happy to come back and give some updates once we know a little bit more. We can also, of course, talk in executive session about some safety and security improvements that maybe we don't want to be public knowledge. So that invitation is out there. And then I added one more slide after I submitted the packet. I just wanted to mention when it comes to professional development, we're going to have both in-person and virtual options this year. August 17th, we're restarting our technology kickoff conference. It's going to be at Woodland Middle School. All of you are invited. Topics are ranging from getting started with Schoology for some of our incoming staff to creating ebooks with a tool called Book Creator, and then there's going to be other sessions for some administrators and non-teaching staff as well. So I'll follow up with an invite, but just wanted to mention that also. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
On your colorful spaghetti chart, what is federal E-rate?
So E-rate is a program that is a federal reimbursement program. So it's based on free and reduced lunch numbers.
Okay.
So our discount rate currently is about 60%. So what happens with things that are eligible, like network switches or UPS units, we do the project and then we submit for 60% reimbursement. So it's a great program. We use that to fund a lot of those replacements that were originally funded with the bond in 2013. But you have to be able to fund the 40%, the district share as well. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Doesn't the money from that, it's the taxes on your phone bills and stuff, isn't it?
Yes.
I think there's one that says E-rate or something.
Yeah, our universal service charge, sometimes it's
So it's on
listed as.
It's
yeah.
on cell phone bills and
Yep.
landlines.
Seth, we toured kind of one of your primary locations over on Best this past spring and saw firsthand just kind of the space where your staff's working out of for a lot of and fixing a lot of those Chromebooks. Can you speak a little bit about that and maybe some of the need? That was pretty interesting when we were
so
there.
we've been out of that technology depot for about 8 or 9 years. And over time, it's just gotten in worse and worse shape. The roof is starting to fail. We actually, this spring, had a pretty significant leak over our main warehouse portion. Fortunately, there's some plastic on the inside that caught all the water before it got to our computers, but that's obviously just not a tenable solution. For a district our size that's doing the amount of work we're doing right now, there's just not enough space for us. And so fortunately, the weather during the summer is good because we're often unpacking stuff in the parking lot over there at food service, pulling pallets off of trucks, unboxing Chromebooks and stuff, and then getting it in through the door. I'm not sure when that was that you guys went, but if you went over there now, it's an even bigger mess just because of all the boxes and stuff that we're trying to work through. And it's great to have our own space. We used to have to share with another department, so it is good to have some dedicated space to that. But having space that we're not sure, whether we're going to have a leak overnight is always a little bit challenging for sure.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Well, we all like it when technology works, and we all know when it doesn't. And so, thank you to you and your staff for all your hard work. That's a lot of pieces.
Yeah,
and so,
thanks.
thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
especially to your staff
Yeah,
and
thanks.
yourself. Thank you.
Thanks.
Transportation, Mr. Voller.
Yes.
And Donda.
Yeah, and I'm
welcome.
going to introduce Donda Walsh, our Director of Transportation, and pass most of the time over to her. And as we transition and she comes up, I just want to thank Donda. She's been in this role for just over a year now and stepped in with the sudden passing of Jill. And she's done a really phenomenal job of grounding that department and working through some of that transition that they experienced. So I just want to thank her for her service to the district and invite Donda Walsh up. And she's going to give you the department report on the transportation.
Thank you, Jeff. And I just want to thank conversations I've had with the board members, Dr. Hawker, and the support from Mr. Voller. It's been very much appreciated, and it helped our department. It helped us get through a lot of stuff. So I thank you all. I'm going to give you an overview of the transportation department. We're going to talk about routes. We're going to talk about the employees within the transportation department, service data that we've had, our bus inventory, a little bit about our bus inventory, changes and improvements that we've gone over this year and moving into next year, and then the current challenges that we have in transportation. Going into this next year, we have 35 general education routes, and a little bit of history on that. Last year, we had to combine 2 routes. In order to meet staffing needs, we had to combine 2 routes. The year prior to that, we had to combine 5 routes. This next year, we combined 1 more route. That's been a challenge. We've had to do some shifting to make the loads right, but the team has pulled it together, and they've done well. On the 8 special needs routes, on that, last year we combined 10 special needs routes into 8 special needs routes, which makes it, special needs routes are at their limit. And in order to have the staffing, that's probably the routes that were taxed the most in time and drivers. Last year, well, we have some grandfathered routes because of the border changes in 2019. We still have 5 routes that are transporting students across borders with a transfer at Lakes Middle School. And we're on the 3rd year of 4 years on that. Also, too, with NEXA moving from the Hayden Lake School, we have 1 bus transporting to NEXA from the old boundary, and we also have 1 old Ramsey boundary bus that travels to NEXA. On our employees, last year we had 60 drivers. We had 57 full-time drivers and 3 part-time. This year we're currently at 53. We have 46 full-time drivers, 7 part-time drivers, and we have 4 in training. hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have 5 in training. Cross our fingers. Aides, we have 7 aides, full-time aides, and 2 part-time aides with 1 full-time aide in training. Support staff, we have 2 mechanics. We are down 1 mechanic. We're supposed to have 3 mechanics. We have an office manager, secretary, a router, and a trainer that is a full-time driver as well. So she takes, during the middle of the day, she trains people, or sometimes we have to fill that route in order for her to train people. All but one of our support staff has CDLs, so they can pop in the seat and drive if need be. So, oh, there's that. Sorry about that. On our service data, our ridership, daily average for 21-22 was 2,176. The daily ridership of 2021 was 2249. And the counts for this past year was 3 counts, whereas the year prior, there was only 2 counts by the state because of the COVID situation. Miles, total miles this last year was 601,978, or 958, excuse me, miles. Year prior was 506,659 miles. We have extracurricular trips, activities, field trips, all that. We had over 1,300. I saw the grimace. And just so you notice, as you can see here, we've got the ridership of the regular school day, and then we've got all of those activity trips, which show that there's 2 distinct systems going here in scheduling. And when those overlapped, it's a struggle, it's conflict. But we're not unique to this situation. Of course, other districts have to do that. And we've had the opportunity to pull across from different districts. We had Lakes Middle School come down and pick up a Lakes Middle School team to take them, Lakeland, to pick up Lakes Middle School to take them up there for a team. We actually brought a team up from down south so that Coeur d'Alene High School could play a football game. So we're working at it, we're making it work. It's just taking a lot of out-of-the-box thinking, so.
So the daily average of riders, those are riders to and from school?
Yes.
Not this, okay.
Yeah, in the morning and afternoon, yep.
Does the increase in mileage include those extra trips, or is that just around town? The mileage compared school year 2021?
That's total mileage. That's
Okay,
everything.
including all the extra trips. Okay, thanks.
We didn't go to school for part of the year on Wednesdays that year, correct?
That is correct.
I saw that too, but I wondered if part of it is the Wednesdays where
Yeah,
there were no
it's the
miles on
Wednesdays, plus also the activities, sports was so limited. I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but I think it was around 600. But I mean, that was all at the end of the school year. So yeah, about half. Going on to bus information, our bus inventory. We have 70 buses, 59 general education buses, and 11 special needs buses. Our buses' average age is 8 years, with 17 over 10, well, between 10 and 22 years for the age of the bus. With the buses, in order to get them serviced, our facility is quite limited at what we can do. So we have to send out a lot of our work, and because we have to do that, the lead time has become extremely long. So then it helps to have those extra buses, and also too, with combining the routes, we didn't even think about this when we were combining the routes, but it actually freed up some buses that those routes are on, and that was a huge help as well. But we're still having issues with lead time and getting buses fixed. And it's not even, of course, getting them fixed, it's parts. We're still waiting for radios from last year's buses. We used old bus radios in the new buses, and we will have to do the same thing this year. So the struggle is real. We have to use all of our buses. As you notice, there's some buses over at Midtown, up to 10 buses. Sometimes we're pulling those to cover those extracurricular activities. So there's some old buses going out there. So it's actually, I like driving the old buses. But yeah.
Can I ask a question about
Of course.
is the limitation for doing more of our own repairs physical space in the thing, or is it manpower? Mechanic?
Well, right now it's both, because we only have the 2 mechanics versus the 3. And actually the state says that we should have 4. But our facility, we don't have a lift. We don't have a pit. We just don't have the equipment available to service the fleet.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question on the fleet, and it might be for Mr. Voller, and not something to answer now, but maybe information you could get us. I think several years ago, I think it was when we increased the maintenance and operation levy to buy some more school buses, and I think it was $600,000 a year to buy 6 to 7 buses a year. I think more than half of our fleet was over 15 years, I believe, at that time. So I was just curious if you could just provide some information. What does our fleet look like and those sorts of things? I believe state reimbursement is over 12 years or 15 years.
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide some exact data on that, but I think you're absolutely right. And I think when you see the average age of 8 years, we are starting to catch up on that replacement cycle. So we have been doing a nice job of catching up on that. We still have some, as Donna mentioned, in that 22-year cycle, but I can provide you exact data on that and get that for you, certainly.
What I haven't seen as much of that we used to see was a $20,000 engine going in a 20-year-old bus.
Yeah, we have gotten rid of some of those buses,
Oh,
and
right.
we've looked at a couple of those and said, okay, do we want to make this bus last a few more years? And you're right, it's a $20,000 to $30,000 price tag to do that on a bus that we're probably going to get $2,000 for if we send it to auctions. So it's just not worth it, and it's not sustainable. So that's a quarter of the cost of a new bus right there, so or more.
Any other questions? Oh, this is kind of out of order. I'd like to kind of go back on the employees a little bit. I apologize, I missed something on that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the turnover on that, on our employees. We actually had, we hired 24 employees over the last 12 months, but we've lost 16. And counting. We still haven't got the final count for coming back to the beginning of the school year. So,
Can you point to anything specific as to that turnover, or is it just a
I can.
bundle of things?
I'll address that. One of our challenges,
Okay.
and if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to go ahead and expound on those. Changes and improvements going forward. We did a pilot over at Dalton this year, implementing what we call the Z-Pass. It is a card that children have that they can, when they get on the bus, and then when they leave the bus, they scan their card. The benefits of that is we know who's on the bus at all times. If an accident happens, we can pull up a report, see who's exactly on the bus. We're not thinking, oh, well, Johnny usually rides the bus this day. We know exactly if Johnny's on there or not. In the future, there's a parent app that is applicable to this, and a parent can view to see when their student got on and off and the location they got on and off. So that would be that'd be huge in our eyes, just know, especially when a parent calls. They don't necessarily have to call now. They can see on the app. And
Do you
going
know,
forward-
sorry
Go ahead.
to interrupt, on that app, I know several years ago when I went to the National School Board Association meeting, there were several of these companies, and one of them, or several of them, the app actually allowed the parents to see where the bus was. So if the bus was running 10 minutes late, it would show that on the app that it was running 10 minutes late. Do you know if it has that type of feature? Because I know that's one of the biggest calls to buildings, is especially
Yeah.
after school, where's the bus?
It hesitantly, it does have that capability. My concern with that is we have children running after the bus because the parent says, "Oh, the bus hasn't come yet." It's a safety concern, and that's the last thing I want is a child running after the bus. Our policy is to have the children out 5 minutes before their bus is to arrive typically, and they have up to 5 minutes after. We've done our, also with this app, we can put out text messages saying that Route 9 is running, usually we wait till it's 10 minutes late and then we'll push out a message, but we've been working on that, and this will actually have that opportunity to do that from the transportation department. Any more questions on ZPass? Oh, also too, the ZPass we're going to be rolling out to all of the elementary schools this next year. Okay, on our SPED routes, we have the 8 special needs routes operating for students who qualify for specialized transportation. It includes the development preschool and the programs at elementary, middle schools, and high school levels throughout the district. To assist the transportation department, we've been working with the SPED team to determine boundaries for your approval as presented in your board packet, but generally summarized as 4 quadrants split by Highway 95 and Kathleen for the elementary, and then not showing in the slides, we have the 2 areas for the high school and middle school separated by Highway 95, and keeping the students of attendance within these boundaries helps efficiencies, and it also on bus-wise, but most importantly, it allows the kids so that they're not on the bus so long when they're transporting back and forth. We have children on the bus, up to an hour, and we give the opportunity to the parents to get in lieu for that so their child isn't on the bus so long. And I'll explain in lieu in just a minute. Right now, we have, as an example, we have a life skills program that is out of Nexa and Fernan, and when we split them up, this one would be that horizontal border. We will have more of an opportunity to get those kids to school in a less amount of time if we have the Nexa people above the line and the Fernan people below the line. So the SPED teams are working hard at when they're placing students to place them within those boundaries. Okay. Any questions on the special needs routes? Oops. Am I missing slides?
That's all we have for slides.
Okay. I will continue on with other changes and improvements. As I stated before, we're going to absorb the one route and relocating and adding and deleting stops. We've gone through many, especially the high school, middle school routes, providing safe stops but increasing bus route efficiencies and reducing the risk of getting stuck in unmaintained neighborhoods in inclement weather. When rerouting, student safety, legislation set by the state of Idaho and neighborhoods with sidewalks were taken into account. This last year, we found not only our organization is being taxed, but the community organizations are being taxed. we might consider a busload of kids that are stuck in a neighborhood a priority, but the tow truck or the plow truck doesn't necessarily do that. So we've taken into consideration plowing routes, becoming more efficient so that they don't have to go so deep into the neighborhoods. And when there's sidewalks, that's an opportunity for a student to walk out safely on a sidewalk. So those were all taken into consideration. In zoning, we have safety busing. That's routing in areas where students live within 1.5 mile radius of the school of attendance but are deemed unsafe by a 13-point Idaho State matrix used to determine safety busing, which includes criteria for traffic, age of students, roadway, environmental, and accident rates. That's reevaluated every 3 years. Since I've come into this position, I've noticed that the matrix that was used prior was an outdated matrix. So going forward, there's going to be some changes within the district, within the whole district, both, redetermining safety busing zones and determining whether or not it actually is a safety busing zone. Our no transfer zones, we have in lieu, areas that do not have safe turnaround, steep grades, or remote access and minimal student population. In lieu is an expense reimbursed by the state for mileage driven to the nearest stop, calculated by the mileage rate that the state sets, and then a $10 per month on the vehicle expense. Current identified non-transportation zones include Pack Saddle, Fernand Hill, French Gulch Loop, Kidd Island, Blue Creek Bay, and there's a complete list of those no transfer zones for in lieu in your packet. Families in these areas may qualify and apply for the in lieu reimbursement. We also have a no transfer walking zone. It is within the 1.5 mile radius around the school set by the state legislation. Our challenge is typically families that live 0.9 to 1.5 from the schools, being frustrated their child is having to walk within the walk that mile. Many of the zones that are now in place the state will not reimburse for riders within the walking zones. So when we take those counts of the riders, we don't get reimbursed for those who are on the bus because they want to be and not because they're in the no walking zone. Any questions on that one? Okay. And on the new buses this year, we added on drop-down chains. I don't know if you've ever seen these in the other school district, but they're magnificent. When I came to the school district, I wondered why we didn't have drop-down chains. So those are $3,000 each, but I think that they're going to be huge in confidence for the drivers and safety, just getting the students there. And of course, the Z-Pass policy. That's one of our priorities this year, is going through the policy book. It hasn't been updated in several years. Also, clarification and updates of the bus rules with all of the changes. We've got new things have come our way. We've had service animals on the bus, and of course, vaping is a situation where we kind of want to get a hold of. So there's a lot of things that could be reworded, and instruments that wasn't outlined, but it was one of the issues that we had this year. But if you can't fit it on your lap, you were not to take it. So work through some issues with that and support from the schools and the music departments within the schools. Current challenges, the bus storage at the yard. Staff parking, we don't have enough parking for our staff, and they're parking on the road, which the road gets pretty slick, and having to walk far to get to your bus in the first place, let alone to the parking lot, to the bus yard. Bathrooms for the staff at the bus yard, that's self-explanatory, I believe, with the porta potties. Hiring and turnover of the staff. We have thought outside of the box in recruitment. In fact, we have this Friday, we have an open house that is geared to the kindergartners, families, getting their children on the bus for the first time so they can be comfortable. But we're also inviting people who might be interested, so becoming part of the team, to get them in there so they can talk to people, because they can see what we're all about. Last year, I believe it was a success. We didn't have many people, but the feedback was very positive. So that's happening this Friday. The new Percy rule, people can retire in transportation, they can retire in the county, and their Percy still continues on. We actually have one driver who loves activities, and we put together a activity bus driver now, to where all they do is activities, and so it doesn't pull away from the routes. We have people who don't want to be there every day to do a route. And finding other niches within the current area demographics. Masseuses, people who make their own schedules and could benefit from the health benefits of being within our system. Masseuses, real estate agents, hair stylists. I mean, we're just trying to get anything that we can do. On the retention, the challenges are the behaviors of the students have changed. The traffic has changed. And the local economy to support these people to stay here has been a challenge. Positives on that, the benefits, the pay has come up, and people appreciate that. The work environment, that's one of the things that I have worked really hard at, is bringing a very good work environment so people enjoy coming. With the COVID, it was so hard because, people couldn't gather when these people are used to gathering. So we've just really worked hard at providing a very friendly work environment, and continue on. And the summer's off. The summer's off. People really enjoy to spend in this beautiful place. It's just wonderful. So another challenge, route timing with the traffic and the inclement weather. That's always coming up, especially the traffic year-round. And also combining the routes. We have, the people aren't used to having 3 to a seat on a bus. We don't have very many of those, but we do have them. And even when you get to 2 on a seat, the students aren't used to it. And then when you have to have 3 other seats, we usually get parents calling. But we cannot transport over 71 students on most of those buses. It might be a little sardine can or a big sardine can, but we're legal when we do what we do. We want the students to be comfortable, and with that, we have shifted as much as we possibly can to make them comfortable and not too bearing even on the driver, because that's an issue with the driver, not necessarily with the driver, but for the driver. And then within the community, Mr. Voller is going to go ahead and.
I was just going to talk briefly, as Donna was talking about the no transportation zones within the 1.5 mile walking. One of the things that I look at is how do we get kids safely to school? And there's a program called Safe Routes to School that the cities are engaged with. They're continuing looking for grant opportunities to improve sidewalks, to improve crossing areas. We partner with some of the local Rotary clubs for the RRFBs, the rapid flashing beacons that you see at the crosswalks where you push the button and the lights go off. And most recently they put one in at Winton Elementary, one at Bora. And so I'm constantly seeking those partnerships with the cities and service organizations to see how we can continue to improve those agencies. I know the city of Hayden is looking at doing sidewalks, coming into Hayden Meadows. If you think about some of those areas in Hayden, there's very little sidewalks in there. And so anytime we can see grant funding or things to support those sidewalks, we'll write letters of support and do whatever we can to encourage those. So I just wanted to highlight some of those partnerships that we've been able to do. And there's some things we've been able to accomplish, but there's also a lot of room for improvement, especially in like Hayden, Dalton. Some of those more rural style communities have very low sidewalks, and we do get complaints of safe paths for kids to get to school. But we're constantly looking for those partnerships. So,
Jeff, I did see, I think it was in the paper or maybe online over the weekend, that the governor's office, through semester funding, awarded a bunch of those across the state, like $20-30 million worth of safety projects.
Yeah,
and I think I saw Hayden and Dalton had several projects.
And I wrote letters of support for both of those. So I saw that, I think,
and they were
today.
big price tag. They were like,
Yep.
one of them was like $250,000. So that must be sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's not just
Yep, that would be
beacons.
for sidewalks and some of the infrastructure to support those for sure. So, yep. So, and I think with that concludes our presentation. Unless you have more questions.
Thank you so much. You can really tell how hard you're working to keep our kids safe. It's a lot of work. Thank you. All right, let's go on. This evening is public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Moving on. All right. Let's see here. We have our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
I'll
There a
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, hearing none. We are on board consent and additional information. Is there any questions on contracted services, purchase orders, admin revisions, or weeded library books? No questions on number 8. All right, we're going to go to then assessment and student achievement update, student industry certifications. Ms. Summers, thank you. I think your mic, your mic.
On?
There you go.
Hi, good evening again.
Good evening.
I'm excited to present to you now that you can hear me for the first time tonight. I'm Heather Summers, and this is my first year as Federal Programs and Assessment Director for the school district. So I have to first acknowledge Mr. Mike Nelson, whose slide deck I did completely plagiarize. So thank you, Mr. Nelson. I did update it, but it's beautiful as usual, but I can't take any credit for this. And I also think that you should enjoy it very, very much, because as soon as I start creating these, I'm not sure what they're going to look like, but I'm going to try. So our certification areas, this is just a review, and I know that you've seen this before, but we have a lot of areas where our students can receive certification while in high school. And you had a nice presentation from K-Tech tonight where you got to see that in action, so pretty amazing. This is just a number of certificates earned this past school year, 414. Many student graduates received certificates this year, and from professional to Microsoft and Adobe, you'll see those are a larger portion of our certifications, and then ASE at K-Tech. $239 students from Coeur d'Alene High School received one or more certification, 119 certifications at Lake City with 137 students receiving one or more. Venture had 13, 4 students had one or more certification, and we had 43 certifications at K-Tech this year. So just taking a look at how does that compare, what are we thinking now? A majority of the graduates have an industry certification. It's up from 279 in 2020, 2021. So we had a total of 414. That was quite a jump. Fewer industry certifications earned over the past 2 years. We had a high of 729 in the 2018-19 school year. So that's an area that we want to put a little more effort into finding out why and what we can do to increase that. There's a larger diversity of certifications that out there that we can be looking at to try to allow students more opportunities. So I think we just need to look into that and how we can provide that and where within our structure. So a target would be still, it was last time and it still would be to try to raise that to 500 certifications or dual degree graduates in 2023 school year. And that is it for my presentation. Do you have questions? I know there was a question regarding the why, one school over another school, but really what that boiled down to is just some change in staffing. And so I think with time, it'll probably even back out.
Do all high schools in Idaho offer these kind of certificates, these opportunities?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know that they all offer all opportunities. I would guess that most or all have some. But Mr. Nelson's here, so he can probably speak.
Mr. Nelson?
Ha! He thought he wasn't going to have to.
Good evening, Chair Smith, members of the board, Dr. Hawker. Yes, the state of Idaho through the IC process allows students to receive one of, it's about 50 or 60 different certifications. From there, we print those on the transcript and we actually provide that information to potential employers as well so that they know how many potential welders, how many potential ASE certified mechanics, how many of those. The most important thing is that the graduates that we have reflect the needs of the community. So that's the question that this slide brings up. Is it's great that a lot of our students are getting advanced certifications in Office and Adobe Acrobat, but is it really where we need to be? So that's kind of where we're continuing
Well, that's kind
to
of
talk.
that's where I was going to go. I can see the K-Tech values and the specialty certificates are amazing, and not to take away from the kids that are doing these, but I know as technology changes super fast all the time, if they earn a certificate in Adobe, is it going to have value a year from now? So this is new to me, these certificates. So
Absolutely, and I think it, again, has to represent the values that we have as a school community and our overall community. We see the needs of the trades in our community as it is, and K-Tech is a wonderful facility, and Mr. Morrisroe talked a little bit about that, but K-Tech could be tripled in size, and we still wouldn't have the amount of need that we have. And it's about certifications, who we can find to be able to offer the types of programs that we would like to have. Absolutely, thank you.
I have a comment, I guess, around this. Sorry, Heather. Sure. And this is maybe more for Dr. Hawker and the board, but just something I've thought a lot about over the last several months. As you know, when we were looking at high school schedules and I was looking at graduation requirements and all these sorts of things on a bunch of districts in Idaho, seeing what they do. One thing that popped up several times is senior project. And I'll be blunt, I'm not a huge fan of how we do senior project. I see it more as sometimes a box checking exercise than a value exercise, and it really depends on the student. But I noticed a number of the schools, particularly in the Treasure Valley area school districts, they're giving students credit, and I think the state allows it, by earning certifications kind of that is in lieu of, or in earning a dual credit associate's degree. They're doing that in lieu of senior project. And I know this year particularly, maybe because I had a senior this year, I heard from a lot more parents, it seemed like for students who were dual enrolled and taking all their courses at North Idaho College, they still had to come back and do a senior project with our district, but they had no connection through an English class at their high school. But so it's something I'd love to see us talk about. I know we're I think going to be talking about schedule flexibilities and those things as Coeur d'Alene kind of figures out what they may want to do. And to me, it seems like a good time to talk about something like that. And maybe it incentivizes some of these programs that we know there is demand for. Dr. Nelson just talked about that. That it gives them an opportunity to do something different that's, career exploration, has more value to the student. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We're going to move into our revised budget public hearing, and the hearing for the 2022-23 revised budget is now open, and public comment will occur after the presentation. Welcome, Shannon.
All right, thank you, Chair Smith, trustees. Deja vu all over again. I'm Shannon Johnston, Finance Director. Back in June, we had our public hearing for our fiscal year 23 budget, and then at a subsequent meeting, we adopted that budget. It did not include the potential school plant facility levy that we are taking for election on August 30th. In order for us to actually, in the event that it passes, in order to levy and certify those with the county, it has to be included in the formal adopted budget. That's why we are taking a revised budget. When we formally revise a budget, it has to go through a public hearing, so hence we have our public hearing following the adoption tonight. So in the packet, nothing's changed other than the inclusion of Fund 420. It includes the $8 million in revenue potentially, and then an offset of $8 million in expenditures. So that's the only change. Didn't provide a presentation on that, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And so then if the levy does not pass, we would just stick with the June?
Yeah, totally okay for it to be in the budget. If it doesn't pass, we just take note and then we revise at year end.
Okay.
Terrific. Any other questions? Thanks. Thank you. Is there any public comment this evening regarding a revised budget? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the revised 2022-2023 budget?
I'll motion to approve the revised 2022-2023 budget.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thanks. Thank you, Shannon. We're going to go into our, this is our fiscal year 23 professional development plan. And so who's going to present? Patty is going to present. It says something different here, so.
Good evening,
Welcome,
Madam
Patty.
Chair Smith, members of the board, and Dr. Hawker. I didn't know my voice was doing that while I was sitting back there. I am presenting about our professional development initiatives this year, and sometimes you hear from the Director of Federal Programs, professional learning falls in there, but we were not going to give two presentations to our new director, so I'm here. And quite frankly, it really is a group effort and a team effort from the instructional core. We work and think and plan about professional learning for our district all year long as a district team. The main goal, and that we want to keep coming back to in this presentation, is that the whole purpose of this is to improve student outcomes. So we want to keep improving our teaching and learning all along the way. It should align with our district strategic plan. And then what we've worked hard to do is to create another level, which is building level plans, where our building leaders are empowered to really think about and plan for what their professional learning opportunities will look like. That should align to the district strategic plan as well. Just a quick review then of where all those different plans came about prior to my time here for sure, but in 2018 there was a futures audit, and just to give you a little idea of that. Again, I know you've all been getting caught up to speed if you're new, or those of you who have been here certainly know it better than I do, but that was surrounding our special services, students with disabilities, and perhaps some professional learning or different strategies we wanted to implement to increase the learning for kids in that category. The curriculum audit happened the next year. And we've talked a lot about that, a lot of findings from an outside group that came in to help us see where we might want to continue to improve in the district. And then a big community involvement effort of creating our portrait of a graduate, and what is it that our community leaders and our parents and patrons want to see when students graduate. And that all happened throughout 2019. Following that, the strategic plan was created as well as an instructional framework. So if I talk about the instructional framework, that was a beginning point probably from the strategic plan. back in 2020, I'd like to say, and outlines a lot of the work that we're working towards. And both of those things obviously want to be updated throughout time. In 2021, the strategic plan timeline was created, and then that was the first time school learning plans were put into place with a lot of work for our building leaders to do to really align with all of that. Then Dr. Hawker came into work here and has been leading us ever since in the implementation of some PLC groundwork. We've been talking quite a bit about those professional learning communities, and that work will continue on for the next couple of years with all schools sending a leadership team to some type of professional learning community, either summit or institute, this next school year. Also happening and beginning last year, continuing into this year, is MTSS groundwork, and that acronym stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, which is some great work, a great framework that is very student-focused. And then we'll move into thinking ahead, which we all have been doing at Instructional Core, to high-reliability schools and that work that we will get to. So here's a little way for you to see how all this learning happens with, of course, the students at the core. So with these three frameworks that we kind of built into this presentation, we really want us to know, is this making a difference for our students? We want to talk about that professional learning as it really is centered on them, and how did we plan for that next year, as well as what did we plan for our schools, what do we plan for in our complete system. The first thing when we think about our students is, for any learning to happen for kids, they have to feel safe. So we grouped the learning we wanted to talk about tonight into safe and supportive school cultures, and then QPR. And I'll share what that is, or give you a reminder. So safe school cultures, we do this in many ways. We do rely a lot on all Instructional Core people, of course, and you heard a little bit about safety for sure from Mr. Denniston tonight, but we do, from Mr. Orchard's Department of Mental Health, talk a lot about prepare, respond, and restore. Probably in any safety program or framework, you're going to talk about what are you doing to prevent and prepare, what are you doing to respond if there are problems at any level, school level, student interaction level, student-teacher interaction level. But a new one coming through the research has been restoration and those practices, because if there's been a problem or an unsafe thing happen, then there's been harm. So now we know that we need to follow up in that regard too, to restore relationships between teachers and kids, or relationships between students, or restore harm that's been done by vandalism or something to the physical facility of the school. So all of those things can really fall within that great work that we're all continuing to do as a foundation. Sources of strength, I think that you've been hearing a lot about and know more about that. Will continue at the secondary level. Trauma-based relational interventions is a program that's obviously based around kids that might come to us with trauma. We're finding a lot of effectiveness with that program. With all kids, it's very strong. It's a pretty intense training that we can send people to, but the neat thing about that and some of these trainings that you'll see is that we can build sustainability and build capacity with our folks here. So we have probably over 30 TBRI trained practitioners, and they can go out then and help within the schools to model and to talk to and to support the use of those strategies that come with that. CPI, which is Crisis Prevention Intervention, is key and important. It's training that we continue to do through our own system with trained people, and that is pretty much a crisis response thing, but it too mirrors a lot of the preventative things we can do to try to keep escalation from happening in our schools. So that's a little bit of what we do to keep schools safe and to keep our staff understanding all the components to help create safe school culture. QPR that I indicated earlier is an acronym from this company that we've received the training from called Question, Persuade, Refer. gatekeeper training, very focused on trying to be more observant and prevent any kids who are contemplating, or staff, death by suicide. So that is a train the trainer model we have been building up and continue to do so with our counselors, nurses, health teachers, and you can see how many we have there trained. The goal is that every certified classified staff member will receive this training every other year. So it would be time for me to get that training again as I read that goal. So had it a few years ago. And then students receiving some of that training in their 7th and 9th grade health classes. Some of the support we want to supply at the school level would be for our leaders, and then again for our teachers and all teaching staff through, again, that instructional framework that's clearly outlined in our strategic plan. When we talk about our leaders, this is pretty exciting work, and everybody that sits behind me here tonight helps with that learning for all of our leaders. We have one-on-one coaching that we do. A lot of that would fall on the shoulders of Mr. Derrick and myself as we meet with and help our principals implement their school learning plans. We also have something that's been going on here for a while called L for L, Learning for Leading. And so that is a monthly thing that has been happening where we have at times service that to come in to us and help us keep developing our leadership. This is an area that you've seen with contract through PEBC that we are now weaning that off, but we're going to continue even with that wonderful executive coach and professional learning provider not coming to us as often. We are picking that up and we're doing that, and then with that process of being able to continue to strengthen all of our teaching and learning without that support coming anymore and paying for that. Another way we do that is through learning walks, and I think you've possibly participated in some of those. I can't remember, but it's just a very effective and wonderful way for leaders to walk throughout the schools while school's in session, go in the classrooms and see the teaching and learning happening, and then coming back and discussing what we see, making sure that we all align with each other for what we think is effective teaching and learning. And then this is really exciting. This is what we are also focusing on, which is increased internal coaching support. We want to continue to support all of our staff, classified and certified, in that instructional framework, and also included in that is the teaching framework. And you've heard that referred to quite a bit, which is a framework of excellent teaching practices. We have that embedded in many different ways to help our teachers and classified staff keep improving in that framework. We utilize our co-teaching and our modeling and reflective interviewing, meeting with teachers to talk about their teaching, hopefully get them talking more about their teaching than we are, which is very effective. And then beyond our principals doing that work, we also now are increasing our model of instructional coaches, and that's very much the priority of the work that they do. We talk about the systems that we're trying to build with the big Y behind that, and it's all about student academic success. Even when we talk about the different sources of strength and all of the things that we're doing to help kids feel safe, it's with the goal to see increased student academic success, because that just then equates to a better future for them. So we have some ways in which we're doing that. MTSS is one of the major initiatives, professional learning communities that I mentioned, and then our lab hosting network, which is getting pretty exciting. When we talk about student academic success, that's going to be data-driven. We will definitely use all of our structures in place with our looking at our systems and our achievement. Some very specifics that we're focusing on right now is our Orton Gillingham foundational literacy work that we are sending teachers to, and we are building trainers in. It is to improve foundational literacy. There is a new legislation requirement that might have been discussed or brought to your attention that not this school year, but by next school year, all teachers teaching reading need to have professional development completed in the area of dyslexia. So we're in the work right now of finding out if this will meet that requirement by the state for our teachers to remain certified. But we're on it and we're figuring that out. And so that would be obviously a pretty important focus for us for professional learning for our elementary teachers. Secondary math continues to be a focus for us, again, based on the outcomes that we're looking at for our students. And any building-specific PD that might exist, that's on the shoulders of the principals, working in conjunction with the instructional core, to be able to know, where's my staff? Where does my staff have needs? What is my staff asking for? As an example, I can tell you at the elementary level, it breaks down to where one of the things they would like to continue discussing is improved student behavior. I'm going to call up Ms. Summers here. She's going to talk about MTSS.
So MTSS is a system-wide improvement in instructional practices that typically has a team approach. So we're all engaged in trying to get students to meet their goals, their learning goals, and improve their student outcomes. And this is one way that school buildings do this. We want each and every child to be seen as valued, loved, and prepared for what they need to do as a student in their school. The district has had district-wide training, starting with one cohort last year. District leadership, Lake City High School, Venture, Canfield, Woodland, CHS, Fernand, Nexa, Winton, all participated last year in MTSS training with the SWIFT group from Kansas, I believe. And this year, the rest of the crew. So if you weren't in cohort 1 last year, you'll be in cohort 2 this year. So they'll start with their year 1 training. Cohort 1 will carry on with year 2 training, and really it's just refining those processes within their school system to make sure that they know where kids are at and what they need to be successful. It often includes it can include a school psychologist or counselor, the classroom teacher. It can include any and all of their primary teachers. And it's really just taking a look at their data. How are they doing academically? But something that's really great and exciting about this is that it's not just academics, it's social, emotionally, how are you doing? If a student is struggling in any area, then we look for ways to provide support for them so that they can succeed just as well as the next guy, I guess, in the classroom.
So when we talk about professional learning communities, that will get explained more and more as our staff experience that training starting this year. Well, I guess it started this past year because the instructional core group participated in a summit. But this is a really specific example of how professional learning communities and that framework for success works. Each quarter, we will pull together all of our teaching staff, and then Mrs. Groutman, I believe, has outlined the work that we will go through with teams, teaching teams. For example, K-5 is at a place in their work to identify essential standards. And that really is it's the very first tenet of a PLC, is what is it that we want students to know, do, and understand. And then all of that work under there that you'll see for each of the rest of the teaching groups and teams will get accomplished. And then this is something I alluded to before that is very exciting. You've asked throughout the year a little bit about what are these trips to Denver about over time. Some of that was because there was a very effective model down there of teachers showing other teachers through a teaching lab or a learning lab some of the great parts of thinking strategies, which is part of that teaching framework that we've all been learning so much about, best teaching strategies. So our staff has typically gone and then learned about that and seen it in action. But at the same time, we've been building that work up here. And so this is the year where we're passing the baton of really building our own lab hosting network, which has been happening, but starting in a real more concentrated way this year. And one of the main focuses for our instructional coaching team and curriculum specialists. So that's pretty exciting to see that happening, where we can even invite other districts in to see the work that we're doing. And then again, in closure, this is all about increased and improved student outcomes. That's the red thread that's through all of this. Each initiative will help us strategically strengthen and improve that for all kids. And I think that just repeats what's already been said. It's not just feeling like we're doing a pretty good job, but it's putting systems and structures in place so we know where we are doing a great job and where we can do better. I think that's it. If you have questions for me or anything I can further explain, or other people can answer questions, we're happy to stand for your questions.
I have a question, maybe a couple.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great PD, professional development here. When is most of this taking place? Staff development days or late start days? How many days a year are we focusing on professional development?
Yeah. System-wide, I don't think I can tell you exactly how many days,
round it
but
out,
definitely built into the system is our Monday collaboration time. And so that's part of what the principals are showing us through their building learning plans. There has been already some work going on in the summer that's planned when we can ask staff in, maybe give them a small daily stipend to come in and do some of that train the trainer work. We also utilize August when people are ready to go, have some things planned before teachers even report. And then those MTSS systems are great places in our buildings where people are implementing everything they're learning through that cohort. And that happens 3 times a year. We come together as a full group with that cohort 1 and cohort 2 that Heather discussed. And then they also then, with that particular PD, have monthly building time to continue understanding more about the nuances of MTSS. And that would be planned with the principals, whether that's just a right after students leave time or whether that's, again, a Monday collaboration or a staff meeting time.
Well, as a former teacher, professional development is wonderful, but I wonder that we are mindful of not overwhelming the teachers who already have such a full, demanding job with so much new stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of us here that have already experienced that, and so I'm always cautious and mindful that we don't overwhelm our teachers who are the heart and soul of our district.
Absolutely, without question. So part of this system that's not in the presentation but is an assessment of needs. And I haven't been here that long to know if through PD if we're having some burnout. I can tell you that that's a pretty big commitment for that group of people doing our lab hosting network, and I have attended some of that, as some of you have, and some pretty big excitement. I think what you say is very true, because to the heart of every great teacher, they'll just go to the ends of the earth to figure out what to do to help kids do better and better. And so we need to be doing those formal assessments because we'll see them asking and wanting to do better and better, but
we don't want to overwhelm them.
Don't want to overwhelm, yeah. Haven't heard too much of that myself personally yet. Any other questions for me or any other core members? Anyone?
I would just say, and this may be a general comment too, just to me, that's where we need to create that stability at the district office, is so, the gadgets aren't changing all the time, or the directions and those sorts of things. That's maybe the biggest thing I've heard in 7 years on the district. There's been a lot of change there at the district office, and the focus has changed somewhat. Some of these things have been, the learning labs, I think, is more consistent, and that's kind of survived lots of turnover because I think the teachers have really found it to be valuable. So, you know, I think that's, and that almost to me feels like we have simplified. I think it's one of the things we have to look at as a district. We do lots of things and we probably do too many things. Like, what do we do that's good and what works and what do we need to quit doing? You know, let's not do something because we've done it for 30 years, but do something because it helps. And to me, that's what I see a little in this, because it does feel like less. It's a lot, but it feels like it's a little more focused, maybe. To
Well,
me.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Trustee Morris Rowe, and I may not have depicted all of those. There's some key frameworks in there that really are quite foundational. Some of them I've worked with for 15 years. I know you have too, Leslie. And I think that is what we're building, is a sustainability. When you hear train the trainer and you have teachers signing up to be doing this, that's sustainability that we're looking for.
I don't fully know how to ask this question, so maybe walk with me a little bit. But one of the things when I see the word support throughout this, I just want to make sure that we're also offering maybe professional development. A lot of it, I love that, you know, the safe school cultures and all that kind of stuff, but I also wonder sometimes, do we do support for the students who are maybe high achieving as well? And sometimes I just wonder, I just don't always hear that. And I want our students at all levels to be supported and pushed, but it doesn't often come across that we're also pushing our high achieving students. And so hear that with I recognize the need at all levels. So,
of course, I know your heart, and so what everybody will get exposed to through the professional learning communities is the overall culture piece, which is that all means all students, and then the MTSS piece that comes in and supports that is that we're looking at school-wide data for all kids, and not always is someone getting advanced on the ISAT or is somebody this place on their IRI, but more so what's the growth we're seeing for each and every student. And then one of the key questions to a PLC is, of course, what is it we want students to know, do, and understand? How are we going to know that? What assessments are we doing to know that? And then what will we do if they don't know it? But the fourth question is exactly what you're asking, which is what will we do if they do know it?
Thanks.
So that's getting strengthened. And every single one of our schools now after this year will have that MTSS training.
great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you so
Terrific,
much.
Thanks.
There is an action item on that item. I just don't.
Oh, there is.
Yes, there is an action item on each of these for your consideration. It may not have refreshed or be appearing in there. Just simply administrative recommends approval of each of these items that will go through A through E.
I
can
see
either hand
that
them one at
now.
a time or individually. I thought might be better.
Let's do
for you.
individual.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so 11A. Oh, so that comes at the end of that. Details is where that is. Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the professional development plan as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great, there's first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out, Dr. Hucker. We're going to move on to our 6th and 7th grade social studies scope and sequence.
Good evening, Chair Smith, trustees, Dr. Hawker. I can make this generally pretty quick. Essentially, there has been an issue with middle school 6th and 7th grade scope and sequence in that oftentimes the teachers in the 6th grade find it very difficult to fit in their ancient Rome unit. And so they are asking for permission to move the ancient Rome unit to the beginning of 7th grade, which 7th grade teachers agree to, and they feel that there is room for that in order to make sure that there is enough time to cover everything to the depth and quality that they're hoping for. And so the 7th grade teachers shared that oftentimes they have to go back and review ancient Rome anyhow. So they would enjoy getting to take this on and do this. So I'm standing before you asking for permission to allow the teachers to do that.
Great, thanks. Is there any questions? All right, is there a motion then to approve?
I'll motion
Moving
to
Rome.
approve the revision of the 6th and 7th grade social studies scope and sequence as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none. Great, thank you. All right, we have long-range planning committee appointment. And is there anyone presenting on that, or is this just that we can approve the long-range planning committee recommendations? Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the long-range planning committee membership as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope.
Do we need to reappoint the liaison? I can't remember if that's on the calendar basis or a school year basis.
Generally on a calendar basis, and so that would be coming up in January.
All right, welcome to Long Range Planning. Thank you to all community members who are serving in that capacity. We appreciate it. Student Advisory Group, SAG bylaws. Is there any presentation for that, or?
There is no presentation. The student advisory group and their advisors have presented these recommended changes to you for your consideration. So we can certainly discuss any and each of those that you may like and go from there.
All right, any questions, comments?
I had a couple comments, and I maybe just need some more understanding on a few things. There were kind of 4 things that stood out to me that raised my eyebrows. And I know we looked at this several months ago, and then it's kind of just coming back to us now. One was on page 2 where it talked about the board liaison selection process, and that it said SAG would be consulted or something to that effect. Maybe.
Consulted in the selection process.
I'll be honest, I didn't love that.
I will say.
May is just very broad. I say I don't love that because it's highly unlikely to actually happen. And I think it would be highly inappropriate for SAG to raise a concern if we did pick somebody. So I just think it's setting us up for conflict that's not necessary. So that was one. On page 4, it talked about the minutes, and I assume it's to simplify the process. But it basically said something to the effect the secretary would record what they felt was appropriate. And, I think there's some things that should just be there. And really, I think it's the things they're deleting. So I question that, but I'm sure there was a reason behind that.
I'd prefer to just see number 6 go. I can see why they don't want number 6. Because that's a lot of elementary kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Why have you abstained? And write it down. Yeah, but I agree with you. Other than number 6, I kind of like the structure.
I'm just going to keep going. I'm on a roll. The page 5, concerns that they brought forward to the board would no longer require a majority vote. And I've kind of flipped to my notes section here. Page 5, I think it's let's see.
Oh, here it is.
It's at the very top there, that second paragraph. It would be number 3 at the top of page 5. It says each recommendation of SAG to the school board trustees shall be approved by a majority vote before being submitted. So I guess I'm concerned if they can't get it out of committee, if a majority of them don't support it, why are they bringing it to us, would be my question. That seems like a fairly common practice amongst committees, that you'd have a vote and it'd be supported by the majority. So I don't know what the reason is with that. And then my final one, and maybe it's for this reason here, would be on page 6, that I believe bylaw changes should be ratified by the board for SAG. It's a board and district advisory group set through policy, and I think the board should have say in their bylaws. And they just changed the wording a little bit. I think it says it should be ratified, and now it says
We could veto it. Says
we
the
can
board could
veto it.
Yeah.
I like ratify better personally. Because to me, that means it has to come to us before it changes, and to veto, to me, kind of means they are approving changes, and then if we catch it and veto it, then we do. So, I don't know. I wasn't involved with the committee. I wasn't the liaison, so I'm not sure what the reasons were for those.
I wasn't able to be there when they were going through and making these changes. It was done at the end of their, so, I agree with the things that you're talking about there, that you've pointed out so far. One thing that I've got to find it. I kind of like the idea of SAG being consulted in the selection process of the liaison. I think that it's important for the working relationship for the two, and if there is some sort of, not necessarily conflict, but issue arising there, that maybe it would be a good time for them to be able to bring that to the board's attention as well, or to suggest that they're really working well with someone and have a great relationship and would like to continue.
I think that would be great. I think if they objected to someone, I think one that puts them in a very awkward position. And I don't know.
My concern would be, how can they object to somebody if they haven't even worked with them yet? Because it sounds like this is the as we're appointing liaisons,
Yeah.
they're objecting to somebody when they don't know how they'll work out. I mean, maybe if there's a problem, they could come, but I don't think upfront that's probably the best.
And I guess I'm not sure, what does that consultation process look like? I mean,
It doesn't say whether it's a formal consultation.
Sure, yeah.
Right. I mean, it says may, so that is, to me, may makes it board discretion.
Yeah.
We may ask to hear from them, we may not, right? But I just wonder if it sets the wrong tone, or the expectation is that we will, and maybe we will, but maybe the next board won't.
Right.
So
That's true.
I guess for me, before I'd feel comfortable voting on these, I would like to hear from SAG or from the SAG advisors.
Or maybe take all these suggestions back and have them do some more work on them to settle it in a better spot at this point, because that's a lot of changes and suggestions both ways. So maybe when they pick that back up.
Maybe they could
again this
fine tune
fall.
and weed out some of the things that we have the concerns over.
Well, if you'd like, we can just table this one, and we will get some more work done on it and bring it back. I'm sure it's August 1, and so the kids are doing something else today besides coming to the meeting. So here in the next board meeting or two, we ought to be able to get them to actually come. Their advisors are great, and I'm sure that they would be able to help fill in the blanks of kind of what they might be thinking, what their comments will be on each of the items, and we'll keep working on this.
Terrific. Thank you.
I have a feeling, even though it's summer and Austin's graduated, he's watching right now. So, hi, Austin, if you are. I have kind of very brief notes on those, Dr. Hucker, but I'll email it to you just so you know what they were. And thank you all.
Great. Anyone else want to give Dr. Hawker any suggestions, or is that good? Sweet. All right, let's look at, are we okay? Because there's a bunch of policies and we're going to take each of them individually, so.
Do we need to vote to table that?
You certainly could if you'd like to, or you can take no action, and that's tabling it as well. So your choice.
Why don't I make a motion just asking that administration take the concerns that were raised to the SAG group and come back with us with a response?
And second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thanks. All right, let's look at policies. Policies for approval. Some of these we pushed from last month. And so we're going to take a look at each one just kind of individually. So the first is policy 1310, procedures. And there was some updated language. Most of these policies that we go through tonight have some public comment that was attached to them as well. So policy 1310 is the procedures. Any comments, questions about this?
Chair Smith, if I
Yeah,
might,
would you like to-
I would, if it's okay.
that'd be
Maybe we'll
great,
just
thank
handle
you.
each one of these policies one at a time, and we can just kind of talk about those. 1310 is a policy that we brought to you, not from School Board Association, but just recognizing that there's kind of a double statement in there in regards to the first sentence talking about making a procedure when it's developed being presented to the board prior to implementation, and then the third sentence saying that it doesn't need to go to the board prior to implementation. So I think it's just important that we get this clarified. I also think it's just as a reminder, I'd like to just share with the board, the administration's responsibility is to put together practices, procedures that are in guidance and in alignment with your policies that you develop. Just this last year alone, since I've been here in 1 year, we've brought to you 40 procedural updates and 9 form updates. And I just want to share that with you because if it's perhaps an opinion of the board that maybe would match some of the public comment that the superintendent or administration shouldn't do anything without the board's permission, I just want to say that we could not operate. It's very important for us to be able to make procedural changes and adaptations on the fly without having to wait for the next board meeting. So as a standard practice, we certainly informed the board at the very next board meeting of any and all updates to those procedures. But just this last year alone, just as a reference, I asked Pam to share that with me last week so I could have that information. And there was 49 things brought to the board, 9 of them forms and 40 procedures alone in 1 year. And last year was my first year here. Now that I know how things run a little bit better, there's likely going to be a whole lot more so that we can make things a little more streamlined and a little more efficient for your use. So certainly recognizing that some of the public comments might be interpreted to think we're going nuts. That's not at all the case. The fact is that we have to be able to operate within your policies. Your policies are oftentimes broad enough, they're defined enough to create some scope, but they're broad enough to create some operational frameworks within there. And then from time to time, we have to make changes on those frameworks. And as I said, last year alone, over 40 plus 9 forms. So with that, that's the recommendation here, is to just simply get rid of that prior to implementation line, so that there's no wondering. If we make no change on the policy, the standard practice that we've been going with would include that other sentence in there that says that it does not need to be prior board approved. So just want to share that with you on policy 1310.
I just wanted to say that it's obviously not something that would be practical to be brought, every single procedure brought to the board for official approval before implementation. However, I do think it would be wise to have procedures reviewed unofficially, maybe via email. That way the board is notified and knows what's coming and has an opportunity to be sure that those procedures align with the board's intent behind the policies that typically drive those procedures. I did have a suggestion on an edit, but I also know that there's other comment to be made on that too, so.
Yeah, I had a comment on this one and actually wrote something similar to what Ms. Anderton shared today, kind of right before I received her email. And there were kind of two issues I took with it. Rebecca, could you turn that to me a little bit? And one, in the current language, it just speaks to when a procedure is developed and not revised. So that was kind of the first thing I put, that third paragraph, that it would change it to when a procedure is developed or revised. And then it would say this: the superintendent shall submit it to the board as an information item at the first regular meeting following implementation. And the only reason I suggest that is because it doesn't say that currently. It says you'll submit it to the board. And, I'm not saying you would do this, Dr. Hawker, but when was, that could be a year down the road. Well, if it's a year down the road, that isn't good for anybody. And part of the reason I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, Dr. Hawker, that policy is really our domain and procedure is your domain. I think, to me, the purpose of the information is, one, so the board's aware, but also so the public's aware if there's a change in practice or procedure. So that would be my suggested edit.
I could easily support that. That's exactly how we do things right now anyway, so.
That's great. I like both their edits, so either one would work. As a newer board member, I appreciate knowing these things, and when it's brought to our attention, it gives us notes so that we can make sure that we're doing our job. So I think it's important that we are kept in the loop. This language I know is a little clunky, so I think either one of your edits sound like it's more clear and concise, which is always better for everybody.
My only concern with kind of the email notification would be twofold. One, it doesn't allow for kind of that public notification, so the public isn't seeing it. And then I'm concerned, does it start dialogue and we find ourselves in an open meeting violation, like someone's going, I don't like this, kind of reply all to an email, which is really a discussion that should be had here.
And so really those things would come back on tonight's agenda under board additional information, right? I mean, because those aren't always things that we vote on or anything like that. Would just come there.
That's
It's
correct.
information.
As we've done on the other 40 items.
I think it's in consent. There was one tonight, I believe.
Right.
A SAG
Yep.
procedure was.
Yep. We just bring that back as board information, and we would do that at your next regular board meeting.
Okay.
And that provides opportunities for us to ask questions if need be, and the public to be informed.
You bet.
All right. Trustee Morrisoro, do you want to make a motion then with updated language? Is that all right? Or
I will. Are you okay with that language I suggested? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I would make a motion to approve policy 1310 with the following edit to paragraph 3, the first sentence. It would read, when a procedure is developed or revised, the superintendent shall submit it to the board as an information item at the first regular monthly board meeting following implementation.
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Policy 1310 then is approved.
Thank you.
With the updates. So, thank you.
I'll send that to you, Sean and Marianne.
Sounds great.
All right, the next policy for review is policy 2385, English Learners Program Summary. 2385, English Learners Program Summary. There was no public comment. Is there any comments or updates that the board would like to make? Dr. Hucker, is there anything you need to say or would like to say about?
Not necessarily. We didn't receive any public comment on that specific policy either, and that's a recommended update from Idaho School Boards Association.
I'll move to approve policy 2385. with the revisions as presented.
Terrific. Is there a second?
I can second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 2385 is approved with the updates. Next policy is policy 2500, library materials. And Dr. Hawker, would you like to speak to this?
I would, and I will likely have to combine that policy with policy 2530 also. They kind of go hand in hand. Policy 2500 is a simple update from School Board Association, just making a recommendation that in order to challenge a material, you don't go through the uniform grievance process. So that was the portion that was removed of 2500. 2530 then would kick in, and they're cross-referenced within those policies, and so 2530 is a policy with a whole lot of red line changes, and Ms. Grotman's there at the mic that can kind of help us walk through those. So if you'd like, we can kind of do them both at the same time, so we can make sure you feel good and you're comfortable on each of those. Ms. Grotman, if you want to take it from there, that'd be great.
Yes. I appreciate that your explanation of how those two work in tandem. The uniform grievance policy really is most often used for, like, if an employee, for example, has a grievance that they would like to have addressed, that would go under the grievance policy, and it really was never a good fit for curriculum objections to any kind of curriculum or library to fall underneath that grievance policy. So the legislature and the ISBA attempted to correct that by having us form committees that would address any kind of grievance procedure. One of the parts of the grievance procedure currently is that it is intended to be solved at the lowest possible level, meaning that if I have a grievance against, say, a item that's in a library, for example, I would bring that to the librarian, who would then perhaps bring that to the principal, and at that point the principal could decide whether or not an item should be removed. The problem with that is that makes it not a system type of decision. Rather, it makes it a building by building decision. And so one item could be removed from a single library versus having it be addressed system-wide. What we're trying to do in these two policies together is make it a system-wide decision that's not down to any one single employee, but rather decided upon by a group that would include our citizens, our public, our parents, so that we can make sure that their voices are heard in any kind of curricular decisions that are made.
Who would appoint this said group?
The board.
The board would. So, to me, this is just such a mess, and it is an optional update. I would prefer, honestly, to put our heads together and see if we can come up with something that's better than this stuff currently. But just to review what you're saying currently they have to go through this grievance process, and this now you want to change it to have a group that we determine.
So the policy doesn't say that. Yeah, the policy says superintendent convenes. I guess it doesn't say who appoints.
Yeah, basically that's right. In the first policy, 2500, make sure I get my numbers right, that simply just takes out a line in there that references following a grievance process. So that policy to me is either you want to follow the grievance policy or you don't. And as Ms. Grotman just explained, that grievance policy or procedure was never meant for that kind of stuff anyway. So I'm in full agreement with School Board Association that one for 2500 ought to just come out. 2530 does have some significant red lines, and in my opinion, those red lines enhance the opportunity for our community and our patrons to be involved in the process. So as Katie just mentioned, previously a patron might come and complain about something that's in a library or in a resource that's in a classroom, and it was held individual buildings might make those decisions. So individual principals. So maybe somewhere a book gets set aside, a resource is said we just don't want to do that, but in all the rest of your schools it is used. This creates a much more systematic approach so that we can be consistent amongst all of our schools. So it simply just says that the challenge will be addressed at the lowest level that you possibly can, but in the event it can't get worked out at that level, then I would appoint a committee, and that committee is made up of specific people that are outlined in this policy, and then that committee goes to work. They make a recommendation. They go back and share that recommendation with those people that perhaps were not thrilled with the resource or whatever, and a recommendation is then made. If it's a primary resource, I'll say, because that's a word we've used here with the board. If it's a primary resource, this is where Katie is saying you guys would make the decision whether it gets pulled or not. If the committee makes a recommendation that it's out and it's a primary resource, primary resources are approved by the board, and you would then make a decision whether or not you're going to support that committee's recommendation, and if you do, then final decision, and it's out or it's in, whatever the committee might say. If it's not a primary resource, if it is a secondary resource, then that decision would reside after that committee would make their decision. We could then, I would make that decision, okay, I'll support the committee's decision or not. And just like with all policies, any decision really that administration might ever make is always appealable to the school board anyway. So it really just allows a process in place, and it allows the committee now the community to actually be part of a committee as they vet through this. So I think it was an attempt by School Boards Association to involve our community members and make it more empowering to them. I think, unfortunately, I think there were some comments that were presented to the board from public comment that were focused on some specific line items and not looking at the whole policy as a whole, that perhaps made it seem like, oh, here we go again, Dr. Hawker is going to make all these decisions, and we don't want that to happen. And that's not at all the case with this policy. I think it's very well organized and put into place to let a committee go back and do the work. The committee has to actually share back out by policy, has to share out their findings with the folks that are involved. I think it's a good step, at least in the right direction.
And Trustee Bjorky, you were correct. I apologize. The board, it does not say that the board creates the committee, rather the superintendent brings the committee together, but it is reported, the information is reported out to the board and can be, whatever decisions are made can be appealed all the way to the board, so the board can have input. And it also includes, it says it includes such parties as instructional staff, other teachers or librarians, administrators, parents or guardians of district students, and any other appropriate individual selected by the superintendent.
So would this be a committee convened on a case, like it would look different for each?
For a case-by-case basis.
Yes, it wouldn't, for example, it would make sense, let's say it's a history, something from history that's being challenged. It would make sense to include history instructors perhaps in that case, and perhaps some secondary administrators and parents of secondary students. If it were an elementary library book, it might make more sense to include a greater focus on elementary adults in the elementary world.
And just so I'm clear, this is a different committee than the ones that we are convening now from the state recommendation and the state mandate.
That is correct.
Could you explain the difference between the two?
Sure. One has to do with challenging a resource that's already been adopted, and one has to do with the adoption of a new resource. That's really the difference.
Dr. Hawker, how will you determine who gets to be on the said committee?
Well, the good news is I would would use all my resources available, because just like Katie said, you can see the guidelines in here. It does say that it includes parties such as, and it gives some great examples. Because just like she's talking about it, if you're talking about an elementary concern, I don't know if I want high school, teachers and administrators maybe making that decision. So that's a different group, and that would be appropriate for the elementary, the elementary folks. But definitely having, parents, maybe even students, all of these suggestions here, plus, it says we can have others. So, if it's so hard to guess, but our intent here moving forward is that the board focus on primary resources. We want the board focused on the learning essentials, what's important, and we want to have some flexibility with supplemental tools, because every student is a little different, and so although a lot of things do work for a vast majority of students, sometimes we need another tool at our disposal for other students. And so we want to be able to break that down between supplemental and primary resources, and this policy, as presented by School Board Association, really accomplishes exactly that. And I didn't even talk to them about writing this, so I was pretty pleased with their first step to help our community be engaged and have a process to challenge something that maybe they don't like.
For me on these, I think if it were 2,500 by itself, I could see where there were concerns raised. But the fact that it's come with 2,530, to me, 2,530 is far more superior, the new version, than the old version. And I like it for a couple of reasons. One, it's specific that it points out that learning materials are not limited to just board-approved materials or curriculum items. And then it does create a formal process, which there really wasn't a formal process before. And then the final paragraph there perhaps says the most important thing in any of these decisions is that it can always come all the way to the board, and that the board has the sole discretion in kind of the final outcome. And I think that's important. Any seasoned superintendents, if there's something that's that controversial, it's going to go to the board. I would guarantee it, because they want that support of their board. So I like this better. I get it's kind of a big change. If there's a feeling we need more time with it and more discussion, I would agree with Leslie's suggestion that we hold it and put it in in one of our monthly meetings, our workshop meetings, our third Monday meetings, and spend 20 or 30 minutes as opposed to doing it here at 7:15.
Yeah, I'd like to definitely at least see whether, if it goes to a committee, if it's been challenged and goes to committee, I'd like to see or have a say as a board as to what the decision is, whether it's kept or pulled. Is that?
I feel like that depends on how many of these are we talking about.
How often do we get challenges to curricular materials that are?
Well, again, I think just as
qualify
2530 details, there's an informal process, and so I wouldn't have a good count in my mind. If things were resolved at that informal process level, we would never even know about those. It would just be for those that doesn't occur. It then outlines a formal process, and then we now get to have a team make that decision rather than one principal or one librarian or one superintendent. It's a group of people, and then that has to be reported out. So you would be, that everybody involved by that detail there, the ones that are using the resource, the policy details out that it's that information, that recommendation of that committee is shared back.
So I don't know that I actually see in the policy that the recommendation has to be shared with the board, other than if it's part of the approved curriculum. So maybe that's something we think about adding.
Yes, that's where my concern lies as well.
I would say just this: in my 7 years of the board, there's never been it come to the board level. Now, right before I came on the board, there was Of Mice and Men. I remember what book it was. because I was coming to all the board meetings, but that's the only one I can think of. And thankfully that happened before I came on the board, because I think there was a lot of long meetings about that. But.
So here's my question then. Could we look at 2500, since that language has nothing within that, removing just, it doesn't have anything to do with the uniform grievance procedure within that, and just update that one and get done with it, and then reserve and hold back the second one then?
I'd be good with that.
All right, so let's go ahead and, is there a motion to approve 2500?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 2500 as presented.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Hearing none, then we'll update 2500. And then for policy 2530, library review and just that whole procedure, then I think, is there a motion to, I guess, table that and to bring it back for future discussion at a...
Chair Smith, may I ask for a clarifying question? Is the major objection, if the major objection is that the board is not informed if about the committee's, and it doesn't say in here about the committee's decision, would it make sense then in the paragraph that reads, the committee shall vote on whether the challenge resource should be kept or removed in accordance with the principles set out in this policy, and shall prepare a written report of its findings and provide copies to the superintendent, the complainant, and to staff members? Would it resolve the issue to say provide copies to the superintendent, the board, the complainant, and the staff members, or are the objections greater than that?
Can I, let me muddy the water a little more. The reason that this is here is it has to do with primary resource or secondary, a supplementary resource. You can see that a supplementary resource, I could pull that without it having to come to the board. I could say, you don't need that. You've got 10 other things you can pick from. You can just drop that. And so I think that's why that is there. The recommendation's going to go back. The next sentence goes on to talk about whether or not it is a primary resource. I'm throwing in that word because that's familiar to you. But if it's a specific resource, that's a different scenario. And so I think we'd want to create some sort of language that would say, if a recommendation comes from a committee to yank or to keep a primary resource, that information not only goes to all those other people she just read, but also to the board for your information. I think that would be great. But if it's a supplementary resource, again trying to not bother you, we want to be able to just say, we've got other things. You don't have to use this resource. It's the committee recommends we get rid of it. Let's just get rid of it. It doesn't need to go any further.
So a primary resource is something the board approved.
Correct.
Is that
Curriculum.
so? That would have to come to us to make a decision.
To pull it out, correct.
Okay.
If there's a problem with a secondary resource, you're just saying it doesn't need to come to the board. That can be handled at the
We would just like to
level.
not have to take care of all of those. Let us
But it
have a
would still
chance.
be taken care of.
Oh, you betcha. And then if it wasn't, any decision, again, can always be appealed right back to the board anyway.
Well, is there any reason I can't make a motion just to table this till next time so we can go over it? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to table 2530 until we can workshop it or do whatever we need.
Sounds good.
I'd like to second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we'll table that for a future meeting. We're going to look at policy 5335, employee use of electronic communication devices.
Thank you. Seth can come out if he needs to, but this is a policy adoption or modification that was put into place at the recommendation from our community. And so we have, there was some concern with teachers that perhaps were using their own private cell phones to maybe record themselves teaching and then sharing it back and forth with other teachers, a practice that is very common and often done in our classrooms. our agreement with a concern that was brought to our attention from our community was that we don't really have a lot of control over those videos when they're backed up on your phone and they go to the cloud at Apple World or wherever they might go, right? And so we have updated that policy to not do that, and if you are going to record yourself teaching and things like that, to use a school provided device, because we do control where those are backed up. In the process of doing that update at that recommendation, Seth recognized that the policy hadn't been visited for a while, and so things like pagers and things are really just not relevant in this policy anymore. So he's gone through and made some additional, updates to modernize the policy. But really, the gist of this policy was to make sure that we're not encouraging our staff to video record on their own personal devices students. As you saw some of the comments have to do with any kind of video recording and perhaps some parents not wanting to have any classroom, anything recorded. And these proposed changes don't have anything to do with that. It's a practice that we've been doing, that many schools do all the time when it's used internally for teacher improvement, teacher professional development. That's oftentimes, it's a closed environment. It's shared only amongst the students. Students are already in the room and they know what's going on anyway. So it's just been a practice that our teachers have been using for a long time, and especially over the last few years with COVID and teacher and student absenteeism, they're able to record themselves a lesson and share it with the student that might not have been there. So lots of good things. This modernizes that policy and also protects the privacy of our students to not have those videos on devices that are not school-owned devices.
I have a question. I think I know the answer. I just want to make sure. Is there an opt-out if parents do not want their object to having their child recorded on any device? Is that something we currently have in place?
There is a publishing opt-out that is done every year at registration. Okay. that requires you to choose whether or not, yes or no, that your picture could be shared with news media or district school social media or district school websites and newsletters.
Okay.
That's
so that comes home like at the beginning of the year packet?
It's a when you register your kid at the beginning of every year on this form, okay. It's all online.
Okay.
It's a yes, no, you have to mark.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an online, I think when you do confirmation of enrollment, I believe.
Okay.
And it seems like every year I sign, maybe some of the rest of you have as well, but I sign off if there's a student teacher that needs to record it for the class. You can either opt in at that point or not. I mean, that's oftentimes, I've signed that if the student teacher has to.
But I think that the issue there is it's not staying internal.
Right, and so that's not internal, so we're
to their
informed.
College that they're. I feel like this actually strengthens our, it requires no person, you can't identify any students on personal devices, and then other, classroom things are internal only, right? So I feel like this strengthens our protections for our students.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. I like everything that I'm seeing so far. I also, just looking at public comments, one of them that we received offered some suggestions as far as additional modifications to that, kind of bulletproofing it, I think, even a little bit more. And I don't know, Seth, have you taken the time to look through those public comments? Do you have any anything to say about the comments by Ms. Dowd?
Yeah, I did look through all the public comments, and I think those would just clean it up a little bit. It was mostly about cross-referencing to some of the other policies. I didn't have a problem with those specific cross-references. I do think that would clean it up a little bit, for sure.
I think it would be helpful if that was, some of those were included in that.
So do you want to identify, is it just the cross references that we want to include? Because if we're going to make a motion, let's be clear on.
She wants to change the word regularly to primarily.
Doesn't have to be everything.
But especially just the cross-reference part. Is that the part that maybe we include there?
Yeah, I think, just trying to make. Yeah, I think it's just the cross-reference information that I was most concerned with.
Terrific.
That's easy enough.
Yep, easy enough that we could include those references at the bottom. So
I'll make a motion to approve 5335 with the inclusion of the cross references from Ms. Dowd in her public comment.
great.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thanks. All right. I think that is all of our policies. We've
First
got
reading.
Thank you, Seth.
No, there's a policies for, those are all of the policies. There's policies for information for first reading then. All right. Dr. Hawker, anything you want to say at this point, or this is our first reading for policy 1420?
First reading, yep, exactly. First reading 1420, just an update to some expenses that could be allowed for board members. And it's our intent to put that out for public comment and then bring it back to you in a month.
Great. Thank you.
Or at your next meeting, I guess I should say.
All right, we've got a long list there as we gear up towards summer and August and September. A workshop coming up on August 22nd. So a couple things there. Also want to point out for the community that school meals fee increase hearing will be held at 5:30 on August 22nd. Looking forward to welcome back for all of our teachers and staff at the district kickoff breakfast at 7:30 a.m. on the August 29th. Then we as a board will do a board retreat following that from 9 to 1 on that day as well. We've got our next regular board meeting on September 12th and then 19th workshop then as well. So lots kind of coming up as we gear up towards the fall. Thank you, everyone, and meeting adjourned.